If you're unlucky enough to have been struck by lightning, you'll probably agree that it was an extraordinary experience. At least that's what most people say who've been struck by lightning. For example, consider this quote from an article in The Atlantic from a man who was struck by lightning. He said, quote, "I saw a white light surrounding my body. It was like I was in a bubble. Everything was in slow motion. I felt like I was in a bubble forever." So other effects of lightning strikes include things like cardiac arrest, chronic pain, muscle aches, and then a host of cognitive issues like memory loss, confusion, dizziness, deafness, headaches, distractibility, and even personality changes. But here's a question. Why should being struck by lightning have so many distinctly cognitive effects? Okay, well, you might know that the brain operates using electricity. So it's not all that surprising that if you were to pump, 200 million volts, which is what a lightning strike is, into the system, that it might screw some stuff up. So the question I have is, how does the brain operate using electricity? I mean, it seems very weird to think that something that's made out of cells, made out of squishy, gooey, watery cells, could generate and use electricity in its operation. Well, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in this video. And the basic answer comes down to the fundamental mechanism that the brain uses to process information, which is called an action potential. All right, hi, I'm Andrew, and this is Sense of Mind. This channel is all about helping you understand your brain so you can upgrade your mind and improve your life. It's about giving you the facts about how your brain works so that you can make decisions about how to best live your life. So this video is part of an ongoing series that will basically serve as an introduction to neuroscience. With every video in this series, we're going to have 3 levels of difficulty. We'll have a 30-second kind of summary of the main idea that will just be really basic, not technical at all. We'll have a 5 to 10-minute video, which is this one, which is about going into a little more detail, but again, not getting too much into the nitty-gritty of how things are working. And then we'll have a third, longer video that will really dive in and describe a lot more of the details in more depth. So whatever level you want to learn about your brain at, we will have a video for you. Okay, so as I mentioned, this video is about the action potential. Now, you may have heard of the action potential by its various names, which are firing, activating, spiking, and even just turning on. So those are all synonyms for the same thing, and we're going to use the term action potential because that's the sort of preferred technical term. So an action potential is basically a series of stepwise processes that occur that allow a neuron to release a neurotransmitter, and that is how it communicates with other cells in its network. It releases these chemicals, and those cells pick up those chemicals, and they may or may not undergo an action potential. But the basic idea is that there's this whole process called the action potential that occurs that allows the neuron to send a neurotransmitter. So we're going to be focusing on the action potential, on how the neuron actually activates in order to send those chemicals. We'll talk about the sending of neurotransmitters in the next few videos. So if you need kind of a primer on what neurons are, why they're important, their basic anatomy, go check out our first set of videos on the topic. And again, there's 3 levels of difficulty. So whatever level you want to jump in at, really any of them should be pretty good for this video. Okay, so we know now that the end result of an action potential is to release neurotransmitters. But the way that that happens, the way that those neurotransmitters are caused to release, the mechanism involves a rise in voltage in the neuron. That's really the critical piece. The neuron's resting voltage has to go up. So that raises 2 questions. One, what causes a neuron to be at a low voltage, or any voltage for that matter in the first place, and what causes it to change? The answer to that question is one word: ions. Ions are positively or negatively charged molecules or atoms. So they carry an electric charge. And that means that if you have more positive ions outside of the cell than inside of the cell, then the inside of the cell is going to be negative because there's a lot of positive charge outside and there's not, any charge really inside. So relative to the outside space, that neuron has a negative charge. Okay, so then how does the neuron change that voltage? How does it raise it so as to eventually release those neurotransmitters? Remember, that's the goal of the whole action potential. So how does the action potential occur? How does that rise in voltage occur? Well, you might guess that if the voltage is established by the difference of the number of positive ions inside and outside the cell, well, then that might be the solution, namely open up and allow positive ions to flow into the cell, thereby raising, the charge. So the voltage goes up, the amount of positive electric charge in the cell goes up. So that happens when a neurotransmitter receptor, which can be either present on a dendrite or a cell body, receives a neurotransmitter, and then a whole bunch of things happen inside the cell, a bunch of chemical reactions that cause the cell to open up little channels that allow lots of positively charged ions to flow in. And so as the voltage rises in the little local areas of the dendrite and the cell body where that receptor was bound, as those little changes occur, eventually the kind of positivity, the positive electric charge spreads through the cell and it reaches the axon. And in fact, it's the base of the axon, an area called the axon hillock. And that, if the positive charge reaches that point, and it is at a what's called the threshold value, so it's at a high enough voltage, it basically causes the same sort of thing to happen. It opens up more of these ion channels throughout the axon, and it travels in a wave down the axon, just opening up these channels, allowing sodium ions to flow in, so allowing those positively charged ions to flow in. And that effectively raises the voltage of that axon, and as it moves down, it's raising it, going down to the tip of the axon, where that rise in voltage causes the release of the neurotransmitters. So there are a couple different mechanisms that are used that actually allow the neuron to both reset its voltage and what's called its ion concentration gradients. So those are covered in detail in the level 3, the longer version of this video, which is actually different and contains some other interesting information, including how Elon Musk's technology Neuralink works. But for now, we can basically understand how the action potential works. It's all about these ions, this change in electric charge across the membrane inside and outside of the cell. So that's kind of the basics of how the brain uses electricity. It's really just the movement of this electric charge. And that allows you to understand at a deeper level why lightning has such a profound effect on the human brain. It is just really messing up action potentials. It's causing action potentials when there shouldn't be any, and it is just really not something that you want to do to your brain. Now, before we go, here is some practical advice that you can walk away with. So if you or anyone you know is struggling with major depression, major depressive disorder, and they or you haven't responded well to psychotherapy and antidepressants, you may ask your doctor, or he or she might recommend that you try electroconvulsive therapy. This would be administered in a clinical setting, in a doctor's office, without a doubt. But it essentially just injects electrical current into the brain, and the goal is to induce a seizure. So that seems pretty weird, but a seizure is really just a wave of action potentials of neurons firing in synchrony across the brain, and it can really start in one place and then travel all the way across the brain. Depends on what kind of seizure. Now, people are under anesthesia when this happens, so there's no flailing of limbs, and you probably wouldn't even know that it occurred. Researchers and doctors don't really understand why this helps, but more often than not, people who are unresponsive to other forms of treatment for major depressive disorder are in fact responsive to electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. In the next set of videos, we'll be talking about how neurons actually send and receive neurotransmitters, a process called neurotransmission. So stick around for that. And if you don't want to miss that video, hit the red subscribe button and also click the bell icon next to the subscribe button so you're notified and you never miss a new video from Sense of Mind. Make sure to like this video and also follow us on Instagram and Facebook and sign up for the newsletter. The links for all of those are in the description. Just so you know, this channel is brought to you by the Diamond Mind Foundation, and this video was written and produced by me, Andrew Cooper Sansone. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.